One fateful day in Rochester, New York. A 64-year-old man goes up into his attic where he makes a shocking discovery. He has a massive bat infestation. While most people would be horrified by this discovery, for this man, this was cause for celebration, because along with the bat infestation comes a very precious resource. If you're from my general age range, the movie Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls probably familiarized you with a substance called guano, bat poop. The movie revolves around a power struggle to take over the guano trade in the fictional African nation of Namibia, because of course whoever controls such a valuable resource as guano will become rich beyond their wildest dreams. And although Ace Ventura is a comedy movie, the value of guano is a very real thing. People have literally fought wars and died over this bat poop. Why is it so valuable? For the most part, because its high nitrogen concentration makes it a superior fertilizer to almost anything else. You know what could use a superior fertilizer? Weed. And the elderly hero of our story was a huge pothead. Bat guano has often been touted as one of the best options for home cannabis growers to have bigger harvests and better tasting, longer lasting final products. And you know that weed guys will do just about anything to get even just 0.01% more high. Guano can be expensive, but if you have access to bat poop, you can just harvest it yourself. Publications for marijuana enthusiasts have often touted the benefits of using bat guano, but they also warn of its dangers and the necessity of carefully following safety precautions. But what happens if you don't follow safety precautions? On December 5th, 2024, an article was published in the medical journal Open Forum Infectious Diseases, histoplasmosis associated with bat guano exposure in cannabis growers. 2 cases. One of these cases was the man who found the bats in his attic. He was admitted to the hospital with a high fever and a chronic dry cough. And on top of several other symptoms, he also experienced an unexplained 35-pound weight loss over the past few months. After performing a CT scan, they discovered several lesions throughout his body, particularly on his pancreas. And a urine test revealed antigens for a fungus called Histoplasma capsulatum, typically found in bat poop, and it's known to cause a severe infection typically found in the lungs called histoplasmosis. When the doctors were trying to figure out how he was exposed, he mentioned the bat infestation and that he was planning to use it to fertilize his cannabis plants. He was given a round of antifungal medication and it managed to get him healthy enough to be discharged from the hospital. But a month later, he found himself back in even worse shape, and ultimately he died from the damage to his bowels. It's unclear whether or not he actually did smoke the poop weed. But the second man covered in the article definitely did smoke the poop weed, a 59-year-old man also from Rochester. He arrived to the hospital with symptoms similar to the other man and was found to have a severe strep infection. After treating the strep failed to improve his breathing, a mass was discovered on his larynx. They suspected that it was cancer, but a biopsy revealed that this was in fact a massive fungal infection. The man admitted that he had bought bat guano online to fertilize his cannabis plants, and he had been in fact smoking them. Although the doctors were able to improve his condition somewhat with antifungal medicine, the damage was already too much and he would die from respiratory failure. Although it's rare for histoplasmosis to ever get this severe, and both of these men had a number of other health problems that surely exacerbated their condition, the authors warned that as more people grow their own weed at home, awareness should be raised about this danger, and commercial bat guano should be tested for this fungus before it's sold. For today's episode of 1001 Ways to Die, poop-related deaths. This video is sponsored by Helix. Helix makes premium mattresses and bedding custom fit to your needs and shipped straight to your door. Everyone sleeps differently, so Helix has you take a sleep quiz to match your body type and sleep preferences. I'm a side sleeper, so Helix set me up with a Sunset mattress. In a Wesper sleep study, participants' sleep performance was measured after switching to a Helix mattress from another brand. 82% of participants saw an increase in their deep sleep cycle. But if you want to keep your old mattress, Helix now has a line of mattress toppers. I got the Ergo Align mattress topper, which is great for preventing back pain, providing more support under your midsection. Helix delivers your mattress right to your door with free shipping in the US. It comes rolled up in a box and it's easy to set up. And to make sure you love your Helix mattress, there's a 100 nights of sleep trial. You also get a 10-year warranty as well as flexible payment plans. I've been sleeping on a Helix mattress for a few years now and it's some of the best sleep that I've ever gotten. This month, Helix is running their Memorial Day sale. Go to helixsleep.com/wang during the month of May. You'll get 27% off site-wide, and you'll also get a free bedding bundle with any Luxe or Elite mattress order. Once again, that's helixsleep.com/wang. On February 8, 2013, paramedics were called to a home in Cornwall, England. When they arrived, they met a mildly autistic 16-year-old girl named Emily Titterington. She was noticeably pale and she was complaining about a pain between her shoulder blades, but she was resistant to their attempts at getting a closer examination. Unable to figure out what was wrong with her, the paramedics urged her to go to the hospital, but she refused. Later that night, around 4 a.m., they would get called back to the same house. What they would see this time was something out of a Shintaro Kago horror manga. They arrive and see Emily's father James on the outside yelling that something went badly wrong. When they get inside, they find Emily on the floor in the doorway to the bathroom, and her mother is standing over her. Emily is vomiting feces, and then her mother moves out of the way. Paramedic Lee Taylor could not believe what he saw next. I could see that her abdomen was grossly extended. Her lower ribs had been pushed out further than her pubic bone. I was shocked. He said that he hadn't noticed her abdomen in the previous visit because her top was so loose-fitting. The reason they found her in this condition: severe constipation. She had reportedly not gone to the bathroom for 2 months at this point. This was on purpose. It was a medical issue known as stool retention. Typically, this is something that only happens to children, but it happened to Emily because she was suffering to something known as toilet phobia. She dealt with this several times over the course of her life, but this time the buildup of feces caused her bowels to expand in such a way that it shifted her organs. This compressed her chest and ultimately led to a fatal heart attack. This was a tragic, unusual death that was seemingly very preventable, especially considering how many doctors and agencies she had seen in the years leading up to her death. A medical inquest was held to see where things went wrong in an attempt to make sure this never happens again, and fingers were pointed in a lot of different directions. Emily's sister and brother-in-law had actually called social services on her mother Geraldine the previous year, fearing that she was the real reason behind Emily's refusal to go to the hospital. They pointed to her focus on homeopathic medicine, different kinds of pills, a program called Body Talk, and something where you heal yourself by listening to blank audio tracks. However, Emily's doctor actually defended Geraldine. He said that she consistently tried to convince Emily to go to the hospital and she just wasn't having it. The doctor himself had prescribed laxatives, and he noted that this could have been prevented had he been able to actually examine her abdomen. At the conclusion of the inquest, the BBC reported the board's findings. The serious case review found there was a lack of continuity across the healthcare system and no clear clinical leader to grip her chronic health problem. Mr. Clements said a number of recommendations had been made, including working to make sure a vulnerable child's voice is heard. The last thing we ever want is for anything like this to happen again, he said. On January 30th of 2014, a 66-year-old man named Philip Vogel underwent heart surgery at Chandler Regional Hospital in Arizona. Any heart surgery is an intense procedure, especially for a man that age, but he was doing as good as could be expected, resting in the recovery room with his wife Rosemary, and he was in good hands. You see, Rosemary was actually a retired nurse who had previously worked at this very facility. Suddenly, an alarm sounds. It's coming from Philip's IV monitor, indicating that there is some kind of issue with the flow, likely a blockage. The hospital staff rushes to the recovery room. When they get there, they see Rosemary doing something to the IV. They're not sure what. Then they take a closer look and see that there's now a brown substance inside the IV. They quickly remove the IV from Philip, and upon doing so, notice that it smells like poop. And sure enough, upon testing the fluid, it was poop. If it wasn't obvious enough who put the poop there, 3 syringes were found in Rosemary's purse, with an empty one testing positive for trace amounts of doo-doo. Philip survived the infection he got from the IV, but doctors were clear that this could have killed him. So Rosemary was arrested for attempted first-degree murder and vulnerable adult abuse. Why would someone do this to their husband of over 30 years? During her hearing, she said that she was sleep-deprived, depressed, and didn't remember doing it. And Philip would actually defend her. He described the incident as a psychological break and said that she was no danger to him. Which, I mean, if your wife injects actual poop into your bloodstream, and then you're just like, yeah, you know what, it happens. I guess that's love. Ultimately, the murder charges were dropped, and she was sentenced to 4 years probation for vulnerable adult abuse. There's a good chance that you've dealt with an annoying neighbor at some point. The neighbor from hell. But I'd wager everything I have that you've never dealt with a neighbor like this. June 20th, 2015, the night before Father's Day in Kendall, a suburb of Miami, Florida. After a long day of shopping in preparation for a Father's Day barbecue, a 52-year-old man named Jose Ray is out with his wife Lizette walking their little Yorkie. As often happens when you walk a dog, it squats down and poops. This time it chose to poop in a neighbor's front yard. Classic cause of many a neighborly dispute. But what happens next is far from a classic outcome. This neighbor's father, a 66-year-old man named Omar Rodriguez, was witness to the dog pooping. And he was not happy about what he saw. He gets into a huge screaming match with Jose, and there's varying accounts of what happened next. According to Jose's wife, they were planning to go to their other neighbor's place for drinks, so he went back home to drop off the dog and get her a mint julep. Omar claimed that Jose threatened to come back and beat him up. So the 66-year-old man responded as Izzy Mandelbaum would, pulling his shirt off and demanding that Jose fight him right then and there. Although the wife's story is more consistent with what the other neighbors saw, they did confirm that Omar did in fact take his shirt off. The altercation continued when Jose returned, culminating in Omar going to his car and grabbing a gun from the glove box. He shoots Jose once, knocking him to the ground. He then stands over Jose and shoots him 2 more times. As Lizette is trying to help her wounded husband, he threatens to shoot her too. Jose was rushed to the hospital in critical condition where he would undergo several surgeries, but unfortunately succumbed to his wounds a week later. Omar insisted that this was all an act of self-defense, that Jose threatened him and he had a shiny object in his hand. And indeed, there was a knife found next to Jose Rey's body. In a brief moment of consciousness following his surgeries, he said that Omar planted the knife. DNA evidence would later support this, as would the multiple neighbors who corroborated his wife's story, saying that all he was holding was a mint julep and when he was shot his hands were in the air. In fact, neighbors from 3 different neighborhoods that Omar had lived in over the past few years had a lot to say about him. The Miami Herald published an article documenting the over 140 complaints that neighbors had filed against him since 2008, as well as an arrest record dating back to 1970. Multiple cases of stalking people. One neighbor claimed he left a dead cat on their property. Another said he slashed their tires. Women would go inside if they saw him coming, and parents would warn their children to avoid making eye contact. He also had a massive history of frivolous lawsuits, described succinctly by the Miami New Times. Interestingly, Rodriguez, a Cuban immigrant, has a proud academic history, a bachelor's degree from the University of Florida, a master's degree from St. Thomas, and a law degree from Drake University. Rodriguez, however, was never admitted to the Florida bar. At first, it was because he refused to pay for a psychiatric evaluation. Rodriguez sued, but ultimately, a court sided with the bar, citing Rodriguez's brushes with the law and numerous civil suit entanglements. It appears he instead tried to channel his legal interests into pursuing code complaints and various civil lawsuits against neighbors over the years. Some neighbors claimed that he would actually patrol the neighborhood looking for dogs. He would wait for the dog to poop and then argue about it. There are even police reports about similar confrontations to the one with Jose Rey, including one that had happened just days before. Overall, it seemed like there was a general sentiment that this man would eventually kill somebody. But his neighbors and police records began to paint a picture of what kind of man this was. Rodriguez asserted that his neighbors were conspiring against him with the local police. And I don't mean that this is just something he said flippantly, this was a part of his legal defense. This might seem like a pretty open and shut case, but it actually took nearly 10 years to get resolved. It was in August of 2024 when a now 75-year-old Omar Rodriguez was sentenced to life in prison, and as Jose Rey's widow read her statement, Rodriguez still taunted her. He yelled, "The coward was your husband. That's why I killed him. He cried like a baby." At the time, she actually wasn't sure what he said, but she expressed disappointment that they couldn't get the death penalty.
I wish, though, that the death sentence would have been on the table, because at the end of the day, Mr. Rodriguez will continue to see his family. They'll be able to visit him and see him. I'll never get to see my husband again. Where's the justice in that?
Anyway, that's all for now. If you like this video, check out my video about people who died from sitting for too long. I'm out.